When people are buying their first luxury watch, typically they want something that can be worn anywhere, with anything, thus rendering it a one watch collection watch. So in this video, we're going to be going over the best one watch collection watches that you can buy for under £1,000. Welcome back to the Chisholm Hunter channel. My name is Harrison, as always. And before we start this video, if you could do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button to help a watch nerd out, I'd really appreciate it. Up first, we have a brand that doesn't get spoken enough about in the industry because it kind of gets dwarfed by Tissot, if I'm perfectly honest. This is the Certina DS7, a 70s looking, a 70s inspired design that fits pretty much all categories. The DS7 looks very similar to the Tissot PRX, and you can definitely see a lot of the same DNA flowing through both of those models. However, the DS7 is that little bit more expensive, and in my opinion, the build quality of the Certina DS7 is just that little bit better. The DS7 does have slightly different proportions to the PRX and does come in full stainless steel. It comes in at 39mm in diameter, 9.94mm in height, and between those lugs, you have about 10mm. It has sapphire crystal glass with anti-reflective coating and also has a fully automatic movement. The movement in this watch is actually the same movement, more or less. It's almost the same movement that's in the PRX, and it's an ETA Powermatic 80 movement. The Powermatic 80 movement, of course, has 80 hours of power and a Nivacron balance spring. Now, within this model, within these variations of models, you do have a couple of differences to play between, especially when it comes to dial color. But I think the most diverse dial color, the one that would fit most occasions for me, has to be the black dial. Now, the proportions of this watch comparatively to the PRX are kind of a love or hate. You can see that it has a more aggressive taper when it comes to the bracelet, and it also has a slightly smaller case size. But I think this is a great all-rounder and a great one watch collection watch. The price of the DS7 does come in at £780, so you are about £220 below the grand mark, and I think for the money you're getting a lot of watch, and to start your collection, it's great. Next on the list, we have another innovative model, and I mean innovative model from Certina. This is the DS Plus. Now, there's a couple of variations of the DS Plus that you can pick between, and also tons of variations in the DS Plus that you can actually make. This is a really cool concept that didn't really take off, but I think it's really, really cool. So the DS Plus pack from Certina gives you one dial, two cases, a bracelet, and a leather or NATO strap. It just depends on the one that you go for. But with this flexibility and variation, you can create about 4 different watches from the one pack, hence rendering it a one watch collection, because you can fit it to almost any aesthetic. You can fit it to almost any scene. If you're going up a hill, you can get the more sporty one. If you're going into the office, you can put the bracelet on it and get the more dressy one. This was a really incredible concept. Now, the DS Plus is the one that I actually had in the studio when we filmed in Skye. They come in at 43.5mm in length, 43.4mm in width, and the height comes in at 11.18mm. They of course have anti-reflective coating and sapphire crystal glass with anti-reflective coating rather, and they come in stainless steel. Now, you do get a couple of gold variations there, but it is PVD gold, hence the price point. The DS Plus pack comes in at around about £950, and for essentially getting 3 to 4 watches from that one pack, that's pretty unbelievable. It's kind of odd calling this a one watch collection because technically you're getting 3 to 4 watches, but technically it is one watch, and that thus makes it probably the perfect one watch collection. Next up, we're diving into Tissot. There's 2 Tissots specifically that spring to mind when you think of one watch collection, luxury, and affordability. One being the Gentleman. And so let's talk about that first. The Tissot Gentleman definitely weighs more to the dressy side because of that polished metal. It has a polished central link down the middle, and it also has 2 brushed links on either side. The Tissot Gentleman comes in at 40mm in diameter, 11.5mm in thickness, and the lugs come in at 21mm. It of course comes in stainless steel, and you do have a ton of color variations to choose between. My personal favorite, it has to be said, is the green. I think the green with the crosshairs on it is just absolutely banging, but I think that if you want the one watch collection vibe, a blue or a black would be maybe a safer option. It just kind of, in my opinion, goes with more. You can dress it up or dress it down a little bit more than the green. The movement on this model, again, is a Powermatic 80 movement with 80 hours of power. It's fully automatic, and its diameter comes in at 25.6 millimeters. For those who want to know. I love those kind of stats. Next up, of course, we have the Powermatic 80 PRX, the kind of most talked about watch in the world for like 2 years. So I hate to bore you guys, but let's just cover it really, really briefly. So the reason that you know it's a Powermatic 80 version is because it has the waffle dial. So you have a pretty brilliant, fantastic look on that dial, a pretty brilliant amount of depth on that dial. And of course, it is 70s inspired. It has that integrated bracelet with quite an aggressive taper on it. And let's not lie, everyone has a PRX because they're awesome. The PRX comes in at 40 millimeters in diameter, 10.9 millimeters in thickness, and 39.5 millimeters in length. It, of course, comes in stainless steel, and since the initial release of the PRX, there was a huge boom in the popularity, and thus Tissot released tons of new lines. The movement on this watch, again, is I feel like a broken record here, it's the Powermatic 80 movement. I've been over the specs before, has 80 hours of power, and you can see it through the open case back, as well as this watch actually having an added complication of a date window. Now, this watch comes in at £640, and I just realized that I totally forgot to cover the Gentleman, so let's compare it to the Gentleman. The Gentleman comes in at £800, and you can actually clearly see the difference in quality when you have these two watches in your hands. I found it in terms of the metal, like you felt like the Gentleman was that little bit heavier, that it has a little bit more to it than the PRX, and that's purely because you're paying that little bit more money. Next on the list, we have the Citizen Sayosa, or Sayosa. Someone left a really great comment that said it's pronounced like this in front of tsunami, Sayosa. So I think I'm saying it right. If I have said it right, thank you guys so much. And on that note of what you guys think about my pronunciations, what have you guys got on the wrist today? It's time for the Chisholm Hunter tradition, which of course is the wrist check. I'm not going to bore you with what I have on because I always have it on. The king. But what do you guys have on the wrist? Please let me know in the comments. I love, honestly, I love seeing all the weird and wonderful watches you guys have on. This Citizen model comes in a variety of different colors, and you do have really fun colors to play with. Yellow or kind of goldy being one of the most fun, bright colors. I'd probably never get that, but it is fun. It is something different, and I like that. I like brands that do something fun, something different. These watches come in at 40 millimeters in diameter and of course come in stainless steel. They have sapphire crystal glass and an automatic movement inside. This watch almost looks like a combination of the Gentleman and the PRX. It has the polished central links, but it looks that little bit more angular than the Gentleman, that little bit more 70s inspired, that little bit different. It also has a date window at the 3 o'clock mark, which is not entirely symmetrical in my eyes, but it's great that it has that complication. Now, this is a big step down in price. It does come in at £299, so almost £300. You can definitely feel the difference in this comparatively to, let's say, a Gentleman or a PRX, but it's £300 cheaper, which is a lot of money. So this is a brilliant place to start, and it's a brilliant one-watch collection piece. Next on the list, we have the Hamilton Khaki Field Murph, not the 42mm variation, because the 42 in my eyes is just that little bit too bulky, but the newer 38mm variation. Now, something that I actually didn't like that they've done with this watch, and it's probably the only thing that I didn't like, they actually took away the Morse code on the second hand. So I'm not sure if you guys remember, but on the original Murph, you had Morse code on the second hand that said Eureka. They took this away for the 38mm variation, which was annoying. I kind of liked that little Easter egg. This Murph comes in at 38mm in diameter, 11.1mm in thickness. It has the H10 movement, which of course is a fully automatic ETA movement with 80 hours of power, and the lug width is 20mm. This watch does have that darkened leather strap, and leather straps aren't always my cup of tea, because literally cup of tea, that's not even funny, Harrison, just leave it. So they're not typically my cup of tea because leather straps, I feel like they sit on my bone on the wrist a little bit, and maybe I'm wearing them wrong, or maybe they're just not for me, but I do like the aesthetic, and I like when leather straps get faded and they look that little bit more vintage. Now, the case of this watch, the actual case shape, is a lot more flat and polished, and It actually looks nice with some wear and tear. That's weird to say, but it does look very nice. There's a really nice variation of kind of classiness, but also vintage-esque to this watch and sportiness because it's a field watch, hence making it an all-rounder, hence making it a one-watch collection, hence making it part of this video. Also, it does come in at £865. A common theme that you might pick up on this video, I do have 2 watches to go, but I'm gonna go off on a tangent a little bit. I'm picking smaller watches. I'm picking smaller case diameters. And the reason being for that is because I feel that smaller watches, they fit more aesthetics. They can be worn with a suit. They can be worn in the field. They can be worn as a diving watch. When you get a big chunky model, it looks so sporty that it's not as versatile as what a one watch collection should be. Rant over. Next up, we have the Mido Ocean Star 39. You guys have me going down a rabbit hole when it comes to micro brands or smaller brands, and I love it. The Mido Ocean Star comes in at 39 millimeters in diameter, and it also comes in at 10.5 millimeters in thickness. It has a width of 39 millimeters and a lug width of 20 millimeters. It, of course, comes in full stainless steel, and it does have sapphire crystal glass to protect the dial of this watch, the kind of legibility of this watch. The cool thing about this watch, though, is on the dial, the kind of texture that they've used on the dial. Now, you do have a couple of color variations to choose between, but the kind of gray to black gradient on that dial combined with the black bezel and then the stainless steel, which looks quite bright, I think is a really nice, just the design of it is really nice. Now, this watch actually is a diving watch, technically, and it does go to 200 meters of water resistance. However, because of the size of it and because of the styling of it with the bracelet, I do believe you could use this in more dressy circumstances, more dressy vibes. Hence why I'm adding it to this list. But let's go on to the movement. The movement is the Mido automatic ETA. So essentially this is an ETA movement with a Mido rotor on it. It's essentially the same movement as you would find in most of the entry-level Swatch watches. This has a power reserve of 72 hours and it does have a date function. This model does have a closed case back, which isn't uncommon amongst diving watches, especially more entry-level diving watches. However, I do prefer open case backs just to see into that beautiful movement. Now, this watch does come in at £990, so it's only £10 under the grand mark, but it does still come under the grand mark, which is cool. This is definitely a little bit more out there because of the texture on the dial, so it kind of just made the cut for this video, and that's that. Next up, we have the Christopher Ward C60 Trident Pro. This thing with the white dial, wow. It's sexy. It is sexy. I really dislike actually the orange strap though. That is something that I'm not, it just doesn't go. It's not the end of the world though, because you can change it for a black strap, you can get a NATO strap on it, but this strap to me just doesn't go. So yeah. The C60 Trident comes in at 42 millimeters in diameter, 11.5 millimeters in height, and the lug to lug comes in at 49.3 millimeters. The face on this watch is that really brilliant white face, and white dial, there's something about just quite simple, quite plain white dials, or even textured white dials like the King here, that just rock. They just pop. Now, the hand on this watch is an orange second hand, which looks rocking against that white dial. It does have a black bezel, which again, the contrast between black and white, I mean, I'm a photographer. You can't get any more contrasty than black and white. This watch is water resistant to 300 meters, and the date window is at the 6 o'clock mark. The movement in this watch is the Certina SW200-1 automatic movement. Now, this movement actually has 26 joules, beats at a frequency of 4 hertz, and also has 38 hours of power. This full package comes in at £750, which is actually good for this watch. It's a very, very good price. And on that note, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please consider hitting that subscribe button or follow our Instagram at Chisholm Hunter Watches, or my Instagram at HB Lifelens, or our podcast at Into the Mind Podcast. And I'll see you guys very soon.